All right, so we'll start with just tell me your name, what branch you were in, and what you did in the military.
Should I stare at the camera or you?
Oh, look at me.
Oh, okay.
Everything's to me.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, what my name is and what branch?
Yes.
My name is Ralph Chamberlain, or Ralph Ernest Chamberlain III, and I was in the Army.
When did you join the Army?
I joined the Army June 30th, 2010.
And was that straight out of high school, or did you have some time off?
I graduated high school, and then I had 2 weeks before I left for basic training.
So you made a decision in high school then that you joined in the Army.
I think I made the decision when I was a kid. I always thought about going in the military since then. I thought there was something higher than myself. So,
Why'd you choose the Army then?
Obviously everybody wanted to be in the Marines, wanted to be the best of the best and stuff like that. But, my father was in the Army, and, I wanted to be a Ranger too, so I wanted to be fighting on the ground instead of, because I assumed the Marines were more sea, and I don't like the sea, so.
Was your dad a Ranger?
No.
Oh. So I guess walk me through the process of when you first contact a recruiter. What does it take to get into the military?
To get in the military, you have to do the ASVAB. That's one of the first things that I did, and then you have to do all the paperwork with a recruiter, and then you have to go to MEPS where they do all your medical stuff. Then you do psych eval, and then you come back until you're ready to ship, and then you go to MEPS again where they check over everything again to make sure you're good to go.
Was there did you know you were going to go to Ranger School, or was that involved in your enlistment, or was that something that came up later?
My contract had Ranger in it. It gave me the opportunity to try out for the Rangers. It wasn't Ranger School, it was Ranger Assessment and Selection that I was guaranteed.
So you decided ahead of time too you wanted to be a Ranger. What was it about the Rangers that stood out for you?
I've always wanted to be something more elite, I guess. And I thought the Rangers were cool. One of the bigger influences for me was my JROTC instructor, and I told him about the Rangers, and he said that's really good, but you have to have a really strong mind, and you have to be strong, which I like to push myself, I guess.
All right. So what then is, before going to basic, what did you think of the Army? What did you think it was going to be like? What kind of preconceptions did you have?
I didn't really have much thought about the Army. Honestly, most of the thought that I had was JROTC, but I was already in JROTC, so I had some type of idea and information about the Army. Really, I joined the Army because it's something I've always wanted to do, and I was kind of a punk when I was a teenager, so I thought they'd kick me into shape. So
then, what's your very first memory of Army life?
My very first memory of Army life, standing in formation, scared for your life, waiting to go to basic training, but.
Were you scared to go? Did you have like the jitters? Were you nervous or?
To go to basic training?
Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely did. I think a lot of guys have like the jitters for not knowing on what's going to happen, the unknown. But I think I was a lot more situated better than others, because a lot others, they never been away from home, and I moved a lot when I was a kid, so it was different for those guys, but not me.
Was basic training difficult, or did you kind of find it easy?
You can say that both ways, that it was easy and difficult, because it was easy because all you have to do is just follow orders. That's it. But it was difficult because so many different people are together for one mission, which is basic training. And, other people have different ideas. Other people have weaknesses and strengths. So some people might not be good at running. So if they don't all run together, we're all going to get in trouble. But that same person might be more intelligent when we had to do an obstacle course or some type of challenge equip. So, it was just really hard to try and get everybody together, all across from America to be on the same mind.
in the end though, do you like that way of working, of bringing a team together of different people have different skills, or do you kind of like to work more independently?
Um, I would say I like to work more independently, but when I joined the Rangers, it was all like-minded people. So it was a lot easier than basic training. Nobody questioned about going to war. In the Ranger Regiment, that was everybody's dream, was to go to war.
So then, you graduated basic. Did you go straight to selection, or did you have like infantry AIT first?
The way the Army works with infantry is they all go through basic training together. And you're not at basic training with other people who aren't infantrymen. So everybody's infantry. And then we do basic training, and then we go to AIT, which is the advanced training for any type of basic trainees. And our advanced training is actually together with the same guys in basic training. So you stay at the same place, and you do your AIT and basic training all at once.
And then Rangers, the selection comes after that?
I was slotted to go to airborne school first. So I went to airborne school, I completed that and got my jump wings. And then I went to Ranger assessment and selection.
I didn't know about airborne. What is airborne school? What is that? Going there, what do you earn? What are you allowed to do?
I was a private at the time, so I didn't really have much freedom compared to other people. But airborne school, you learn how to jump out of airplanes. It's 3 weeks, and I guess it was a really good experience. But it was definitely a lot of waiting. Definitely a lot of frustrating training because all you want to do is just jump out of an airplane. But everything they teach you, when you start jumping and you start jumping a lot more, you realize that it was good training.
So then selection, Ranger selection. That's like a prequel, I guess, to go to Ranger school, correct?
No, because Ranger assessment and selection process. That's actually to go into the special operations battalions called the 75th Rangers. So Ranger School is just a leadership school. Anybody in the Army can go there. And anybody in the Army can try out for the Rangers, but we're a part of the United States Army Special Operations Command. So somebody who goes to Ranger School and gets their Ranger tab, they're not a part of the Special Operations Command. So they're not in a Ranger battalion. But if you go through the selection process, then you're a part of the special operations.
So then there's guys out there who have the Ranger tab, and all that says is basically it's like a diploma. They went to Ranger school. Yeah,
I mean you could say it that way. I don't want to belittle Ranger school because it's not a joke at all. But we always say that the tab, which is the Ranger tab that you earn in Ranger school, is just a school. But the Ranger Scroll, which is our unit insignia, is a way of life.
So then what is the incentive for someone not going to the Ranger Battalion to go to Ranger School?
Ranger School is by far, I think, the best leadership school that you can go to. Obviously you could learn really good leadership skills from your unit and from your fellow peers. But Ranger School pushes you to the point where, you really figure out who you are when you're in your worst situation.
So you finish Ranger School, and then I guess, what's the process? Where do you go from there after going through Ranger School and everything?
It really starts from the beginning. Is I went through the Ranger selection process, and I got assigned to the Ranger Battalion at Fort Lewis, Washington. And I was a private there. I didn't have a Ranger tab, so I had a Ranger Scroll. And the way the Ranger battalions work is if you don't have a Ranger tab, you're not a leader. So it's kind of like a rite of passage into the Ranger battalion to be an NCO. And I was a private for maybe 8 months, and then I deployed to Afghanistan. And then right when I came back from Afghanistan, they sent me to Ranger school to get my Ranger tab so I can be a leader.
And then is that, do you automatically get the rank of corporal or sergeant at that point, or do you have to kind of build up to it still?
Essentially, you get automatically promoted to E4, which is specialist, and that's not an NCO. But they do have an NCO for E4, which is corporal, and I ended up being a corporal because when I came back from Ranger school, I became an NCO.
All right, so then you're in you're assigned you're in Washington and you're hanging out with these guys. I guess you're with guys who, I mean, these guys have been through Ranger School, probably have multiple deployments under their belt. Being around those guys, what's the feeling? What's it like in somewhere like that compared to, I guess I don't want to say like a regular Army unit, but a non-Ranger unit.
I mean, you really look up to the guys. They're pretty much like superheroes to you, I guess. But being a private in a brand new area, you have to prove yourself. So it's like every day, you always try your best to show them that, that you can be a part of their team. But, like even looking back now, I was those guys that people looked up to. I can see why they acted the way they did, and they are not easy on new people who want to be just like them, because there's so much that you have to prove. All because you went through a selection process doesn't mean, that you're one of them.
You still had so in that 8 months before deployment, and I guess even during the deployment, you had to prove yourself still to those guys.
I mean, really in Ranger Battalion, you don't prove yourself until you get the Ranger tab. It's a rite of passage. So that's why no NCOs, at least infantry NCOs, you're not an NCO unless you have your Ranger tab.
Okay. I guess a little bit of a sidetrack. You enlisted in the Army in 2010.
Yeah.
Correct? You enlisted when, there was still, Iraq had started to cool down, but Afghanistan was still pretty not a good place to hang out.
Yeah.
Did you expect to deploy? Did you want to deploy to go to war?
I mean, I didn't expect to deploy, but I knew that I was going to. Well, I guess I should say I expected it then. Because, like the Ranger battalions, we deploy every year. So, you're going to deploy regardless. Like you could have gotten there a couple months earlier and they're like, hey, you got to go deploy. But, in the Ranger battalion, everybody wants to deploy. They want to be in war. They're just not people who aren't satisfied with training. They're satisfied with applying their training, and actually being that they always wanted to be. So
then the day the orders came down and you found out you're going to Afghanistan, what kind of feeling do you have? Are you excited? Are you nervous? What do you think?
Obviously I was nervous, but I was more excited than anything because that's exactly why I joined the Rangers. Was I wanted to deploy. I wanted to be in a war zone. I guess I could go back to looking at those guys that are above me right when I got there. They deployed multiple times. They'd done multiple combat missions, and I wanted to be like them.
So then the day comes, you board the plane to go overseas, and you basically leave the United States for the last time for however many months. You anxious? What is it like to know you're on a plane to go to war?
I would say it's very exciting. Like people like me from my unit, I guess we have a different mindset. We live to go to war. We live to, because that's the reason why we joined the unit. We joined the unit to have the quickest way to go into combat, to be right there when everything goes down. We didn't want to sit around a base and defend bases. No, we wanted to go out and attack people. And, it takes a certain mindset to be that type of person. So I've never met anybody in Ranger Battalion who did not want to deploy.
So then, what was your first impression of Afghanistan?
Well, it really smells a lot, but it all depends. Like when I landed.
Yeah.
When I landed, we were in a big base. It was all desert everywhere. It did stink, but it's just crazy. Like it didn't even feel like I was in a different country, because I was just following orders, and I didn't really realize what was going on until stuff started going down. So, but it happens all so fast, and looking back at it, it's hard to really realize how you felt at that time, I guess.
Is it, did you go for like a 9 to 12 month deployment or a Ranger deployment shorter?
The Ranger deployments are usually about 4 to 6 months. So usually how the cycle works is, we deploy to 4 to 6 months, and then we're back in America to 6 to 8 months. So it's a never-ending cycle. So you're always ready to deploy all the time.
So then you got to Afghanistan. Do you have like a base you were centered at, or were you at one of the major U.S. bases, or where did you kind of spend your time in country?
Majority of the time we were on big bases. So, people could pull security for us because, we had a different mission. We had stuff specifically, we would go out to do an exact mission. A lot of other guys, they do a lot of patrols to make sure there's no bad guys around and just go to villages and stuff. We weren't like that. When we had a mission, we did it. If we didn't have a mission, we just wait until we did. So we didn't have to, worry about security or anything like that on the big bases. That was delegated to other units.
So you guys were, when you went out, it was to, capture a target, or it was to execute a mission that was of high priority, I guess?
Yeah.
What, as much as you can, what was a typical mission like? What kind of missions did you run when you were over there?
It all depends. I deployed 4 times, so I was in 4 different regions. I guess the best way I could say is like my first deployment when I deployed to Salerno, it was very mountainous. It wasn't desert at all when I went there. And, we'd walk for 10 to 11 clicks. I guess you could say like 8 miles, 7 miles. We'd walk up mountains, and then we'd go to like villages because, in Afghanistan they don't have roads. They do have roads, but not, like America. But, that was usually the thing. We'd walk to the target, we'd get the target, whatever happened, and then we'd get exfilled by helicopters.
So then did you interact with the locals a lot, or was it more just you were in a town for a mission and then you left?
No, we never interacted with the locals. The only interaction that we'd do is if we didn't find the person, we'd, ask the people nicely, I guess, next door. You'd be like, hey, have you seen this guy? Do you know him? That was the most interaction at all. We didn't try and, talk to people or, I guess, be friendly. I'm not saying, like, be friendly in a wrong way, but, that wasn't our prime purpose. Our purpose was to catch a guy or, do whatever.
So your first deployment's up, you're back home. Did things change for you? How did you feel post-deployment as compared to, before you ever deployed?
I don't know. Being in a Ranger Battalion, all you do is train. You don't have time to go out. You don't have time to, I guess, be in the civilian world. So, like right when you're back home, you're training back again for the next deployment. So, as far as that, I would say that I definitely felt like I had more experience when it came to my job. And, I had about 3-4 weeks of vacation, I guess. Well, when I say vacation, I mean not doing anything, but still being at work. But then I got sent to Ranger School. So I came back from my first deployment to America, and then I got sent to Ranger School, and then I left for my second deployment again in 2 weeks after I graduated. So I didn't really have a lot of time, to relax, I guess, after my first and second deployment.
Did you like it that way, where you came back, went to Ranger School, and then basically you unpacked and you repacked to go overseas again?
Yeah, I don't have a family. As far as I don't have a wife, I don't have kids, any of that. So I didn't really have things that I had to worry about as far as that. The only thing that I ever thought about all the time was how to be the best Ranger, I guess. And that's how everybody thinks there. It's very competitive, and it's very, I guess, there's a lot of alpha males. So you always want to try to be the best person that you can.
So for Ranger School, this is something you've wanted, you wanted for years. So to finally get that tab, what kind of day is that like for you?
It's a great feeling. It really was a great feeling, because Ranger School really sucks, man. It really sucks, and I got done with it, but it's crazy because these people that aren't in the Ranger Battalion, they have so much respect for the Ranger tab, But once you go back to the Ranger Battalion, they're just like, oh, look, you got a tab. Time to go train. Now you're one of us, you know? It wasn't like, no, really, you know, thank you, or, you know, wow, you know, you're cool. It was like, no, we all have the same thing, you know? So it wasn't, I guess it wasn't really much congratulations, and, you know, you were just one of the guys now.
Looking back on it, you know, now that you're out of the military, having that tab, does that mean something to you?
Oh, yeah, it means a lot to me. But, you know, there's two ways you could look at it. It means a lot to me, but, you know, like a lot of people, I guess they want, like, recognition, you know, for the things that they did. But, you know, a lot of guys, like, from my unit, it just means that, you know, like, that you know yourself. It's not as much as the tab. It's just more like you know how you are in that situation when you have no food and no sleep and you have to do a mission. And you know that you can function in that, and you're a tough guy. So I guess that's really what I really got out of it instead of just a tab.
So you get back to your unit and you're deploying again. Are you less excited, more excited? I mean, you kind of already have done this before now. What's it like to deploy a second time?
I don't know, it kind of sucked because I got back from Ranger School, and I only had like a week or two before I had to go to Afghanistan. So, you know, like, those guys, you know, like, they really care a lot about you, so they gave me a couple of days off before I, you know, went to Afghanistan, because I wasn't going to say, you know, oh, hey, just let me stay back for a little bit, and then I'll come meet you guys later. You know, like, I would never not deploy and, you know, leave my guys to go to Afghanistan. But I would say that I was probably more excited because now that I had my Ranger tab, I can be a leader and I can lead people and be, you know, it always comes back to trying to prove yourself more every day, you know. So now I broke that next barrier, and now there's another barrier that I have to break.
So your second deployment, did you go back to the same place you were the first time, or is it similar missions? Like what was the difference, I guess?
My second deployment, we went to this small camp, and it was in Kabul, and some of the deployment we were training people, like we were mostly training the Afghani nationals that we used on targets, so we trained them a lot. So that was when I actually had more interaction with the Afghans than before. But like, you know, like we would still do like missions and stuff, but you know, I definitely had a different perspective on that deployment. But that was the only deployment where I had that perspective, because then my other two deployments, then I, you know, was back on the strike force, I guess. But my second deployment was more unique. So
you come back from the second deployment, come back to the States for a little bit, go deploy again, and then repeat the cycle one more time. How long of a time period was that?
Between when I was in America?
When your first deployment and your last deployment?
4 years maybe? About 4 years. Because I deployed 4 times, and yeah.
So looking back on those 4 deployments, you know, what are some of the highlights? What are some of the, you know, I guess the fun moments or the, you know, memorable moments being in country?
You know, like, at the end of my first deployment, we got really good at doing missions. Very good. You know, everybody was, you know, a prime ranger. You know, we were veterans. Like, we've seen everything. So, you know, it just gotten to the point where we did so much that, you know, nobody was scared of anything. Like, if something was going on, or, like, you know, if our FOB got mortared, I guess, you know, because we'd get mortared all the time. And I remember at the end of the deployment, we would get mortared, and, you know, everybody would run to the bunkers, you know, trying to get away, like, so people don't get injured. But what me and my buddies would do is when the base would get mortared, we'd run to the chow hall and steal all the food and then run back, because we knew everybody was, you know, running away from the mortars. But, you know, we got to the point where, you know, we just didn't even care. You know, it happened so many times that, you know, that's just what happens, I guess.
How long into your, I guess it was your first deployment, how long into your first deployment was it until you took contact for the first time?
No, it was like the first deployment, like the first mission almost. Yeah, I mean, no, because we were walking for so long, and I don't know, it was like, it wasn't really like directly towards us, but it was like pop shots, I guess, because that's what they do a lot. They like to shoot at our direction and then think that they killed like 10 of us and then run away and celebrate. So that's like pretty much what it is a lot.
What's it like to be shot at by someone who wants to kill you?
I don't know. It's like you're such in a rush and you're such you don't really know what's going on, and like being so ingrained in your mind that you just follow orders. You're not thinking about it. You're more like, I don't want to let my friends down, so you're not really worried about those things.
How so today there's video games like Call of Duty, Medal of Honor, and these games have spectacular firefights, and it's constant action for 20 minutes, and then it's just this high intensity, and that's what a lot of people are formulating their feelings and ideas about on war.
Mm.
What's it really like? What's a real firefight like? What's it like to actually be in combat and be engaged with an enemy?
In Call of Duty, you see the guy, and you see the guy, you see the face and everything like that. But like in Afghanistan, sometimes you don't even see the person. You just shoot towards their direction. It's not so up and close, I guess, as it was, like in Call of Duty and stuff. Because you don't really know. You don't know what their direction is. I don't know. It's really hard sometimes, but like I don't know. Like I guess I could say it this way. You see a lot of videos of like guys like in combat and stuff in Afghanistan, and they're shooting towards the direction. And those guys, a lot of times that they don't try and maneuver on you. They don't try and run towards you. They just shoot at you and try and run away. So it's not as much, I guess, up and close and personal as people think it is. But sometimes it can be. But a lot of the times, we work at night. So, like all you do is just see green with your night vision goggles. So, it really is sometimes like a video game, I guess, but.
Is it scary to be walking around in some unknown village with only looking through your night vision in a place that, there's somebody out there trying to hurt you? What keeps you going? What keeps you moving forward?
I will say like two situations. I always felt safe because, I had all my friends and, fellow Rangers in the platoon. We were all together. But, I guess like when we're running away, trying to like, get back to base or whatever, like we don't need to be there anymore, so we'll leave. The biggest fear I said that I would always have was like being left behind, I guess. I guess that really comes back to always trying to prove yourself because you don't want to be left behind. You want to be with the pack or you want to be in front of it, So I guess, like when you're the last man, in I guess the formation and you're walking away from the village, you get the sense of dread because you feel like you're the last man, and if you don't keep up, you're going to be left behind. So, that was like definitely always my biggest fear.
What was some of over the 4 deployments? What was some of the worst times you had over there?
I don't know. Like I had a lot of bad times, but like some of my worst times was just walking, really, because we had to walk so much and we had so much equipment on, and it was just terrible. You're up in mountains, and you could like take a misstep and then fall off the mountain, and that was some of like the harder times, and then like other times it's just like just like crappy things happen, I guess.
Can you elaborate on that, or?
Yeah, I don't know, it's crappy because, my first deployment, I lost 2 of my best friends, and, it just sucks because I wasn't there with them, so, it always comes back to, you wish that you were there with the pack, I guess,
How important is brotherhood then in the military, and especially in the Rangers?
Oh, it's the most important thing. that you can have in the military. It really is. You know, like, you don't want to let, you know, like people go to combat, you know, and a lot of people say, this is for like my country, you know, kind of thing. And it really is. But when you're there, it's more like this is for my friend next to me, you know. So brotherhood is everything.
When then did you? I guess did you over the 4 years? Did you deploy with the same group of guys, or did they kind of mix you up a little bit?
Oh yeah, you always deploy with the same group of guys. I mean, you know, obviously we get new guys. Some guys leave, but you know, like I was together with some guys for all my whole 4 years. You know, so.
What do you remember some? Like, what were some of their names? Who were they?
Some of my first team leaders was like Grossman, Carter, you know, and then I had Smith and some of the guys that came with me, the battalion, you know, it was like me, Fitzpatrick, and then I had like my best friend Max Williams, my other best friend Chivers. Max and Chivers were in my squad, so you know, like we were always together doing everything, you know, like you know, we really never left each other's sight, I guess. You know, we were always together. But
how then do you, you know, when someone doesn't come home, how does that affect the unit as a whole?
I don't know. I mean, it really sucks, but like, you know, my company didn't lose anybody, but you know, the company next to us did lose those two guys. And, you know, I guess there's a lot of bitterness, but, you know, it always comes back to, you know, you can always do more, I guess. You know, like I always tell myself, you know, that I'm not satisfied with my service because those guys did way more than I did, you know, and I guess I think that's the same mentality everybody has when, you know, they lose somebody is, you know, they have somebody that did so much because, you know, they lost their life. And then you just keep telling yourself that, you know, I can do more, you know, because they did so much that every day that I should try and be like them.
What, you know, what were, I mean, did you have a lot of casualties? Did you take a lot of casualties, or did everybody pretty much make it back unscathed? Like, did you?
Well, my first deployment, well, we lost 4 guys out of the whole battalion, though, and I mean, I don't know. You know, like some deployments, like we definitely go through and nobody got hurt. Well, I shouldn't say nobody got hurt, but nobody died, and you know, that's all obviously like the best thing to have. But you know, like still, like you know, like people get shot and people get injured. And it really sucks for them because it really affects their whole life. This guy that I knew, he got shot through the tricep, and you know, he can't even use that arm anymore. You know, and it's like he doesn't even know why he's alive now because you know he doesn't have an arm anymore. So it sucks. You know.
Did you ever think? I mean, does that kind of stuff play in your head where you know, you could take a wrong step and lose a leg? Do you consider that? Do you think about that, or do you just kind of push it?
I mean, yeah, sure. You always thought about that. When I was in Kandahar, there's a lot of IEDs in Kandahar, so that's like one of the things that you always thought of. But, you know, like, I guess it's more along the sense, like, if you got injured, like, you know, your friends next to you will help you. So, you know, there's nothing really to worry about, I guess. You'd say it that way.
So then you finish up your 4 deployments, and what, you know, what, I guess, which deployment for you was the best, or which one really stood out, or which one did you, I don't want to say most enjoy, but...
Yeah. Oh, man, I would say my first deployment, honestly. Because, you know, like, I was a private, so, you know, like, I had leaders to tell me everything. But when I became a leader, you know, I was always stressed out every day, making sure, like, my guys are good and everything. You know, it's very stressful. And then, like, on top of that, you have to make sure that you're on point and, you know, you're doing just as good. So when I became a leader, it was a lot harder than when I was a private.
What kind of weight comes on your shoulders when you're now responsible for the lives of, you know, a couple other guys underneath you?
It's a lot of weight, but it all comes into confidence, I guess. You know, you have to feel confident in yourself, you know, so they can feel confident in you.
Um, Getting around country, did you normally mostly drive or was it by air?
It was mostly by helicopter. We definitely had like times where we would ride in Strikers, which is like an armored vehicle, and I didn't like that because you know I get seasick or whatever in those. But I liked flying in helicopters, and that's what we mostly did.
You got seasick in a Striker, but not in a like a Black Hawk or a Chinook?
Yeah, I know. Like, you know, I would sleep a lot on the helicopters, and then when the mission would go on, then I'd wake back up. So you know, it was weird because, you know, like I'm here in Penn State, and you know I have a hard time sleeping. But you know, like back then in Afghanistan, when I had like 20 minutes to sleep, I can pass out, you know, right away. So it's weird.
Did you normally was it like fast roping out of the helicopters or did it touch down in a like at an LZ and you just walk?
It was mostly like touchdown. We never did a fast rope. We were going to, like, we're all trained in it, and there was definitely other companies that did. But you know, fast roping is really dangerous, and you know you don't get guys out of the helicopter as fast, so it's always easier to touch down and then everybody run off, and then it flies away. But you know, like I said, like fast roping is very dangerous, so it's definitely one of those things where you know that's like one of the last things that they want to do.
So you got home after your fourth deployment, and at what point did you make the decision I'm no longer gonna stay in the military?
I mean, this was like 3 months before I was supposed to get out, kind of thing. It felt like because you know, like it all comes back to you know you don't want to leave all your friends and stuff, but you know, in like the back of my mind, you know, I thought the war was going to be over, so you know, I felt like they didn't need me anymore because you know I didn't want to leave them. But, you know, like there's a lot of things that I want to do in life too still, but that's what I did.
Were you disappointed to leave that group of guys, or when you finally got back fully into civilian life, were you kind of relieved?
I mean, like both ways, I guess, you know. I was relieved to leave because then I don't have to wake up at 5 in the morning and run 5 miles every day. But at the same time, you know, like, you know, the friends that you meet in the military, you know, like you can't make that anywhere else.
What with Afghanistan today, Afghanistan is basically being ripped apart by multiple different groups. There's been places like Ramadi, for example, fell at one point to ISIS. You know, when you hear about that stuff in the news and these are places that Americans lost their lives fighting for, and at that point, it was taken back by the enemy. How do you handle that? What do you think of that?
It's really hard because it's a lot of different factors that I think you know, like a lot of people like to voice their opinions on what we should do and what we shouldn't do. And you know, there's so many things that a lot of people don't know about those countries. You know, and I guess you could look at it this way, like, you know, each person thinks that they're right, so that's why they're fighting. You know, like ISIS thinks that they're right in what they're doing, so that's why they're going to die for their cause. At the same time, you know, like the Taliban think, you know, they're right in what they're doing, so they're going to do what they think is right to themselves. And it's really hard because, you know, like when I was in Afghanistan, you meet a lot of people who like really got their life changed when America came in a good way. You know, like they got employed by the military. They can make money for their families and stuff, you know, because they don't really have a lot of good jobs there. It's mostly a lot of farmers. But at the same time, you know, like I can see how they can relate that we would infringe on their culture and stuff like that. You know, so it's a really, really hard subject, I guess.
What do you think was the mission? What do you think you accomplished by going over there in America in general?
I would say like the mission more is like majority of the time the people that we would go after are people who tried targeting Americans, you know, and so that was like majority of what we did. You know, like we never, like I said, we never went out to like villages or anything like that. Like we had a different mission, and you know, it was always somebody who wanted to target Americans. So like every time we did something, we always thought, hey, we got another bad guy off. But like I said, I could see like their point of view, I guess, on why they do what they do.
Do you think Afghanistan will ever become kind of, I guess, the American dream of a democratic society where there is no issues, or do you think do you think the region can do that, or do you always think it'll be the way it is?
I mean, it could go two ways. I think that they can be like a democratic society, but like to us, that's a good thing, I guess. Like to them, like how do we know if that's a good thing for them? But one thing I will say is, those people, they don't get education like us. They barely even go to school. Like some of them could barely even write and read. So it's really hard to tell them to change their way of life, I guess, when they've seen the same thing every day. And then, like Americans come by and say, hey, I want you guys to do this now. I guess, it's really hard, I guess, situation.
There's a fear right now in the United States of Muslims and Islam. How do you explain to somebody on the corner that how would you describe Islam to them and the Muslim people?
It's just like a religion, just like everything else. Like a lot of those people are very devote to their religion and everything, and like I've met a lot of good Muslims too, like a lot of interpreters overseas and stuff. It's just like afraid of the unknown, I guess. And I will say like a lot of people do manipulate, I guess, the religion into like bad things and stuff like that, like like ISIS. Like I said, those guys, they don't read and write. Like a lot of them, they don't know much except just Islam. So when you tell them, these people called Americans are going to come and they're against Islam, then automatically you're going to be like, wow, these Americans are bad. So that's how they're going to react. And that's how it is a lot over there. Like there's definitely been a lot of people that we saw that never seen Americans before, and all they do is hear bad things about Americans. So they don't know any better. Like if I was in their shoes, like I'd think the same thing. You lived in this village for your whole life, and then people are saying, these bad guys are coming over to take over your village. I would get up and fight too. And it's a really hard situation.
How, for you specifically, has war changed, and being in the military and going to war, has it changed your outlook on things? Has it changed your perspective now that you're back in the civilian life?
Oh, yeah. I would say I'm not quick to judge, I guess. I always think, like especially being in special operations, there's always a reason, I guess, for everything. And you can't judge something off of something you just hear. There's always two sides of the story. Like a lot of people, they get, right when they hear something, like let's say like Republicans, right when Republicans hear something about their party, they automatically believe them. It's really hard because people don't see the two sides of every story. So I think it just makes you more mature being in the military like that, where you're not very skeptical about everything, and you're more, you try and get as much information about stuff before you automatically criticize something.
What's it like? I mean, you're 23. You're not much older than most of the kids on a college campus. What's it like reintegrating into this? This is college is kind of like just an incubated society. It's not really real life yet. So the people inside of it don't really understand what the real world's like. Whereas you have 5-6 years of real world experience, and then you're coming back into this world. What's it like being in college with the 18, 19-year-old college kids?
I would say that it's very, I guess, it feels great, I guess. It feels like you're a regular person again. Like a lot of my friends, when we'd go out, when we got off work in the Rangers, we just wanted to be like everybody else. And I guess it's a good feeling, too, because that, there's places like this where, a lot of people didn't really have to think about a lot of things, and, they could just relax and stuff. And, obviously school is very stressful, but, it's a good time, I think.
Is it easier for you to handle the stress of a final during finals week than, a student who hasn't had military experience? Are you able to cope with those kind of pressures?
Yeah, I mean, I cope with all of it, but I would say that the stresses are different. You know, in Afghanistan, you're stressful about, obviously like getting into shit and getting into trouble or whatever and getting hurt. But, in school, when you have an exam, you're more stressed out about failing an exam. I guess you more feel like you don't want your life to be ruined. Like you don't want, like your dreams, I guess, to be shattered. So that's why people get a lot more stressed out than they should be.
Is it okay then to complain about something like having a 10-page paper due the next day? Do you have an issue with that, or is that just part of human nature?
Um, I think a lot of people complain, especially like college students. They like to complain because they want people, to sympathize with them, and they want to make themselves feel like that they're doing a lot, and that they feel like that they're being very successful and they're doing more than the person next to them. So I don't think it's as much complaining about having exams as much as, hey, I'm taking this exam to better my life, but I don't complain about anything. I don't really like posting anything on social media. So, but like some people are different. I guess I can't really see it the way that they are. But
Um, a big issue with young veterans today is PTSD and suicide. Have you had any experiences with suicide, or have you had any direct contact with anybody who's just thought that might be the best option or for them?
Dang, man, it really hit me with the hard questions. I don't know. I mean, we used to always joke in my unit that we don't have PTSD from war. We have PTSD from like our team leaders from, crushing us and being mad at us. But, I think everybody has PTSD about everything. Like even guys that don't even like see combat in Afghanistan, like when they're getting mortared and stuff, it's just always like the unknown, I guess. And PTSD is a lot about like guilt. Like I have a lot of guilt about that too, like not being there for my friends. And it sucks, but I'm glad the way the world is now where, if you have PTSD, you can go look for it. And I'm really glad that that's a very, accepted thing, especially even in my unit. Like we have a very high suicide rate, but, it's okay to go seek for PTSD, I guess, because PTSD has always been viewed as weak, but I don't think it's like that,
What would you say to a guy, a soldier who's thinking about ending the life, thinking that's the best option? You've been through some pretty bad stuff. How would you tell them to turn away from that?
I don't know. I can't really answer that one.
What you mentioned guilt. Things happened overseas and guys didn't come home, and it was a result of a bullet or two just finding the right, landing in the right place, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
How do you feel guilt from that?
Like,
why do you feel guilty that another Ranger didn't come home?
I guess like you feel guilty because you feel like that you could have always done more. Like I said, I can never be satisfied with my service. Because you always felt like that you could have done something. Like, you could have been there, you could have charged them or something, or you could have shot at them. And I guess that ties a lot with the PTSD like we were talking about earlier. You always felt like that you could have done more, and that person, could be having the life that they've always wanted. But, that's really what the guilt really comes from, I guess. But
Do you have is it still, do you still keep the memories alive with you? Do you still have issues? Do you have issues sleeping? Do you have, do you find yourself hearing a car backfire and wanting to seek cover?
I would say like I'm more sensitive to sounds a lot. I mean, you saw me and I kind of freaked out on that, and I guess I'm very I used to have this problem where I always thought people were following me all the time. Every time I drove my car, I'd always look behind on the rear view mirror and making sure that nobody's following me. But I don't know. It's hard, but I don't know.
Are you happy to be at Penn State, be a college kid, and kind of just be able to relax now, or?
Oh yeah, I love it a lot. I like it a lot. But I always miss the military a lot though too.
So if you're sitting in class with somebody and they find out that you're a Ranger, how would you describe the Rangers to them? What is a Ranger?
Honestly, I probably wouldn't really try and describe it because nobody would really know how it is. But a Ranger is a person who wants to be the best of the best in the Army. They want to be in a unit with like-minded people, and they can never be satisfied with who they are because there's always somebody better than you, and you always want to continue to be a better person. So that's really what a Ranger is.
A question I forgot to ask that kind of goes back to your time in the Rangers. What was your job? What did you do in the Rangers? How is it made up? Is it what did you do on a deployment?
I was 11 Bravo infantry, so we were on a strike force. It was like regular infantry squads. You have the squad leader, the team leaders, then you have grenadiers, saw gunners and everything. I was a grenadier on my first deployment, and then I became a machine gun team leader for the next 2 deployments, and then I went to a specialty platoon after that. So.
And that's a highly specialized
Yeah.
platoon that deals with certain circumstances.
Yeah.
Walking around campus, do you tell people that you're in the military? Do you talk about it at all?
No, not really. Because a lot of guys like me, I guess, they don't try and look for special recognition for being in the military. And, it's just a different path in life, I guess. When people find out and they're like, oh, that's so cool and stuff. And I just tell them, I'm not better than you, I just took a different way in life. And, I think a lot of, especially with this war nowadays, a lot of people try and look for recognition for their service. And I don't know, I don't really like it a lot.
Do you find yourself gravitating? Have you found friends here who are in the military? Does that kind of culture, is there a community of veterans on campus? Or have you kind of just moved on from that?
A lot of my friends actually come here, from my Ranger battalion. So that's pretty much all I really hang out with. There is a veteran fraternity and stuff and all that stuff, but I don't really like to get into that because those guys, they're something else. But not in I don't know, it's just weird, because I have different mindsets than them. They still try and act like they're living in the military. And, I just want to be a normal person, I guess. But I do hang out with all my friends from Ranger Battalion, and, that's one of the reasons why I came to Penn State, was because one of my best friends from the Army ended up coming here, so.
When people find out you're a veteran and they say thank you, how do you answer them?
Well, the nice thing to do is just say, thank you as well. But, I think it's just more like a trend. I think a lot of people say it because they think that's the right thing to do, instead of, I am truly thankful. But, I don't see the problem. I think I really like the way, I guess, people are towards veterans now, and they think that's the right thing to do, which I think that's the right thing to do too. But, I like the way that, people in the Army are now viewed in the media compared to Vietnam era guys. I think they really had a lot of bad rep for nothing. And that's a topic that actually really makes me angry. But
when you come across a Vietnam vet or a World War II vet out in public, do you acknowledge that you're a veteran yourself? Do you guys have that bond, or do you kind of just thank him and move on?
Oh yeah, I usually tell him I was in the Army. I think, because he's just like me. So it's automatically a bond. Sometimes me and my buddy, we go to the American Legion here and talk to friends like that, and I have a lot of respect for anybody that joins the military, I guess. And a lot of like those, like I said, those Vietnam guys, Korean War guys, like any of those guys, they had a really hard time, compared to us, like global war on terrorism, veterans. Like we had bases and stuff, and we could relax sometimes. Not all the times. I'm not saying that's everybody, but those guys in Vietnam, like they barely had anything, and it's tough.
Going along with the thank you, and you kind of touched on how it's almost like a checkbox you have to tick.
Yeah.
A lot of people out there would call you a hero and say you were full of courage. What is your definition of heroism?
I don't know. I think just going into the unknown really is heroism. Like a lot of guys, like we've done missions where everybody was, kind of on the edge, like, oh man, this is gonna be really hard, or it's very dangerous. But all those guys are like heroes to me. I don't consider myself a hero, man. I just, I did what I had to do. But some of those guys, like I said, especially the guys that lost their lives, they're the real heroes. That's why I say I'm never satisfied, because I'm not a real hero. So, but
when you see the American flag, does that stir anything in you, or is that what is it?
Oh yeah, I love seeing the American flag. Like in Afghanistan, we used to always draw it on everywhere. It's a symbol, I guess, more of freedom, and not like the cliche way of freedom, but the way of freedom as in, being in America, you can be whoever you want to be, and I think that's a great opportunity for anybody, because when you go to places like Afghanistan, those guys, they don't really have a lot of options to be able to do in their life. It's either like farmer or taxi driver, one of those, But in America, you could be anything you want. And I think that's like the greatest symbol about it.
So then, going back to when you were 17, 18, you're going to meet the recruiter for the first time, till now, would you do it all again?
Oh yeah. I loved it. I mean, I can say it now that I loved every second of it, but obviously, when I had like one meal a day and dying, I wouldn't say that then, but looking back at it now, it's an experience I guess you could never have anywhere else.
Is there anything we didn't talk about or didn't touch on that you wanted to add, or?
I think that's it.
You're good?
Yeah.
All right, that's it for me then.
Awesome.
Let me kill this.